Let's get the reaction then of Hamas and speak to Osama Hamdan, who's the senior Hamas spokesman. He's joining us on the phone. Thank you very much, Mr. Hamdan, for joining us on Al Jazeera. So the US president there saying that a temporary ceasefire in Gaza could be reached in a few days. What is your reaction to that? How realistic is that from Hamas's point of view?
Well, unfortunately, I don't know how President Biden came up with this conclusion, because the paper which was introduced by the American side in Paris didn't show any real will to achieve a ceasefire. It was most closely to the Israeli position. And anyway, Prime Minister Netanyahu had said that there was no kind of an agreement with the American side on a ceasefire. So I am wondering why he is saying that and how he is saying that, how he came up with this conclusion.
Did President Biden's comments come to you as a surprise? Did you receive an official proposal for a deal or not?
Well, there was no official proposal as an American proposal, but was delivered after the late Paris meeting, and it was the paper which was delivered after this meeting was an American ideas about what is supposed to be discussed, nothing more than this.
Okay. Well, Al Jazeera, we've been told that this deal would include the exchange of 400 Palestinian prisoners for 40 Israeli captives held in Gaza. Can you confirm any of this? Was this part of the deal? Will Hamas agree to a deal that will allow for the release of 40 captives held in Gaza?
Well, this is the main problem, how the Americans are thinking. We are talking about the ceasefire. We are talking about the Israeli attacks, to stop the Israeli attacks against the Palestinians. We are talking about the starvation in Gaza, how to make an end for this. Everyone heard Gallant at the 9th of October talking that he will prevent food, water, anything, electricity to the Palestinians in order to make them surrender for the Israelis. So it is a will to do that starvation in Gaza. And the Americans are talking about the prisoner exchange. We have to talk about the most important, essential issue, to release the prisoners in the open-air jail, the biggest open-air jail in the world, Gaza. He has to release the people in Gaza to let the food come to them to eat, because we are talking about certain people who have died by starvation in the northern part of Gaza. This is how we see the hypocrisy of the American administration. They are talking about releasing some Israelis while hundreds of thousands, 2.4 million of Palestinians are starving in Gaza.
What is Hamas's main demand today, Mr. Hamdan? What would you agree to in order to have a deal right now with Israel and make a ceasefire a reality in Gaza in the coming days?
Well, we are the only side who is talking about the ceasefire, while the Israelis are talking about a pause and the Americans are still talking about a pause. Our paper, which was introduced for the mediators and through them to the Israelis and the Americans, talks about a ceasefire. It talks about the lift of the siege on Gaza. It talks about the reconstruction of Gaza, and talks also about the prisoners exchange. No one can talk about just only the prisoners exchange. We have to start talking from making an end for the sufferness of the Palestinians, as I have said, in the biggest open-air jail in the world.
So Hamas today wants a ceasefire, as you say, not a pause. You want a lift of the siege of Gaza as well. Mr. Hamdan, we have almost 30,000 Palestinians who've been killed and who are under a lot of pressure today. They are starving. Babies are dying of malnutrition. What are you willing to compromise on, where can you be flexible to allow the suffering of Palestinians to stop?
Well, I have to remind you that those Palestinians have been killed by the Israelis. And those Palestinians are starving by the Israelis and by the hypocrisy and the support of the United States administration. So if anyone is talking frankly about making an end for this sufferness, for this killing, you have to make an end for the Israeli attacks against the Palestinians. This is why Hamas is standing very sharp. We want to make an end for the occupation and the attack against the Palestinians, because you can't guarantee the end of the sufferness unless the occupation is ended. This is why we are standing in this sharp position, because Israel is killing the Palestinians for the last 75 years, and no one is saying that. Everyone is asking the victims to be calm while they are being slaughtered. This is a real hypocrisy in the American policy.
So one last question, Mr. Hamdan. So is a deal near or not? Could there be a ceasefire in the coming days?
We hope to have a ceasefire, but it seems to me that neither Biden or Netanyahu are willing to do the same.
Thank you for talking to us. Osama Hamdan is senior Hamas spokesperson, joining us there on the phone. Well, let's get the viewpoint from Israel now and bring in Zein Basravi, from the Israeli viewpoint, I should say, and bring in Zein Basravi, who's in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. What are the Israelis saying, Zein, to these hopeful comments from Biden?
Well, it seems as though at the moment the only thing Hamas and Israel seem to agree on is contradicting the U.S. president. Israeli officials spent much of the day downplaying these very, as you say, optimistic remarks from U.S. President Joe Biden regarding a potential timeline for a ceasefire in the war on Gaza. And in the last few hours, we've heard from the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In a statement, he has said that, quote, "Since the beginning of the war, I have been leading a political campaign aimed at curbing the pressure to end the war prematurely," he says. And on the other hand, also getting support for Israel. And in the statement, Netanyahu goes on to quote a poll saying that Israel continues to enjoy widespread support in the American public. Netanyahu clearly signaling that as long as he enjoys American public support, as long as Israel enjoys support in the U.S. public sphere, he does not have to do what the White House or what President Joe Biden says with regards to curbing the conflict or trying to bring an end to the war in Gaza. And just on Sunday, on the U.S. talk shows, Netanyahu was also quoted as saying that deal or no deal, an assault on Rafah, on the besieged area of Rafah, where so many people are sheltering, so many displaced Palestinians are sheltering, that will carry on regardless of how the deal does or does not go forward.
Zein, thank you for the update. Zein Basravi live for us in Ramallah.